There's this story that gets whispered around Hollywood, usually after a few drinks, when the big shots think nobody's listening. An assistant director leans across the table, checks over his shoulder, then drops this bomb. Clint doesn't make a fuss when someone pisses him off. He just never calls them again, ever. But here's the crazy part. We're not talking about some nobody director. We're talking about Clint freaking Eastwood, the guy who made Go Ahead Make My Day so iconic that presidents started saying it. The man who's been running Hollywood for 60 years with nothing but squinted eyes and whispered threats. And apparently, he's been keeping a secret hit list this entire time. 5 actors who committed the ultimate sin in his world. They wasted his precious time. And once you're on Clint's list, you're dead to him forever. But wait until you hear who made the cut. Some of these names are going to blow your mind. The one-take king's iron rule. Picture the quietest film set you've ever imagined. The director speaks so softly that crew members have to lean in just to hear him. Actors nail their scenes in one shot, then immediately move on to the next one. This is Clint Eastwood's world. His rule is stupidly simple. Show up ready. Do it right the first time. Don't waste my time. Break that rule, you're done. Forever. Clint believes magic happens on the first take, says someone who worked with him for years. Ask for a second take and he thinks you're basically saying, I don't trust you to do your job. And for a guy who's been making masterpieces for decades, that's like slapping him in the face. But what exactly gets you blacklisted? It's not about being a bad actor. Hell, some of the most famous people in Hollywood are on this list. It's about something way worse, disrespecting the work itself. And these 5 names, they each screwed up in their own spectacular way. Number 5, the drunk Shakespeare guy. Okay, this first name is going to shock you. We're talking about a legendary actor, a guy who made Elizabeth Taylor fall in love with him twice, someone who could recite Shakespeare while drunk off his ass, Richard Burton. Now picture this disaster. It's 1968. Young Clint Eastwood is building his reputation on a World War II movie called Where Eagles Dare. He shows up at dawn, lines memorized, ready to work. Then Burton stumbles onto set. And I mean literally stumbles. Richard would roll up late, hungover as hell, sometimes still drunk from the night before, says a camera guy who watched this train wreck happen. Clint's standing there, prepared as always, watching this Shakespeare legend fumble through lines he obviously never looked at. But here's where it gets really bad. There's this one scene where Burton has to deliver this big speech about the mission. Should have been easy for a guy with his training, right? Wrong. 20 takes. 20 freaking attempts at the same scene. By take 10, something changed in Eastwood's face. He walked away from the cameras and just watched, like he was studying a fascinating but disgusting bug. When someone asked if he was pissed, Clint said, I'm getting paid by the picture, not by the hour, remembers a production assistant. But you could tell he was ready to murder someone. But wait, it gets worse. Burton starts talking shit about the movie, calls it just a paycheck, loud enough for everyone to hear. For Eastwood, who treats every single role like it's Hamlet, this was basically declaring war. Years later, someone asked Clint about working with Burton. His response? 3 words that ended a career. Talented guy. Wasted talent. That was it. Burton was dead to him. Number 4, the crying meltdown queen. Number 4 is heartbreaking because this actress actually died young, but her time with Eastwood was a complete disaster. Jean Seberg. You know her from that French movie Breathless, where she looks all cool and mysterious. Well, she wasn't cool or mysterious on the set of Paint Your Wagon in 1968. She was a hot mess. Picture Clint Eastwood, already uncomfortable because he has to sing and dance in this musical. Then picture his co-star having emotional breakdowns in her trailer every single day. Clint approached the singing like everything else, with discipline, says someone who was there. Jean was in her own world. He'd be ready to work, and she'd be crying about something in her trailer. The guy who never shows emotion had to deal with someone who never stopped showing emotion. But the real nightmare was filming their romantic scenes. There was this simple scene where they just had to walk and talk, remembers a script supervisor. Clint knew his lines perfectly. Jean kept stopping in the middle to ask about her character's feelings and motivations. After the 5th interruption, Eastwood just walked away, came back 10 minutes later, and said 4 words, "Let's just get this done." That was as close to losing his shit as Clint Eastwood ever gets. But here's what really put her on the permanent blacklist. After the movie bombed, Seberg gave interviews basically blaming Eastwood, said his wooden performance ruined the film. For a guy who keeps his private life locked down tighter than Fort Knox, this public betrayal was unforgivable. He never spoke badly about her, especially after she killed herself in 1979. But people close to him noticed something weird. Whenever someone mentioned Paint Your Wagon or Jean Seberg, he'd immediately change the subject. Some people aren't cut out for this work. He said once, "It's not their fault, but I don't need to deal with it twice." Number 3, the stare down king. Number 3 is wild because we're talking about two absolute badasses who should have been perfect together. Tommy Lee Jones in the Line of Fire. On paper, this was genius casting. Two tough guys who don't waste words, don't waste time, just get the job done. In reality, they nearly killed each other. The problem was, Jones kept trying to dominate every single scene. And for Eastwood, who believes acting is about listening to your scene partner, this was like nails on a chalkboard. But it got way weirder than that. Jones started staying in character between takes. So when they'd film a scene where his character is being an asshole to Eastwood's character, Jones would keep being an asshole even after the director yelled, "Cut." Picture this. They finish filming an intense confrontation scene. Director says, "Cut." Normal actors would relax, maybe crack a joke. Not Tommy Lee Jones. He'd just keep staring Eastwood down with pure hatred in his eyes. There was this one scene where Tommy's character is screaming at Clint's Secret Service agent, says a sound guy who was there. After they called cut, Tommy just kept staring him down, staying in character. Eastwood looked at him for a long moment, then turned around and walked away. Later, someone heard him mutter to his assistant, "Life's too short for that bullshit." That was it. Jones was done. After filming Wrapped, Eastwood had chances to cast Jones in other movies, perfect roles that seemed made for him. Every single time, casting directors say Clint would just shake his head. "Let's look at other options." When someone asked him years later about working with Jones again, his answer was ice cold. "Tommy's got his way of working. I've got mine. Sometimes different approaches should stay different." Translation: never happening again. Number 2, the take-obsessed perfectionist. Number 2 is going to blow your mind because we're talking about one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, that Leo. The guy who won an Oscar. The guy who does months of research for every role. The guy everyone loves. Well, everyone except Clint Eastwood. When they made J. Edgar in 2011, it was supposed to be this prestigious collaboration. Oscar-winning director meets Oscar-winning actor. Instead, it was torture for both of them. Here's the problem. Leo approaches acting like he's writing a PhD thesis. He researches everything. He asks a million questions. He wants to try every scene 15 different ways. Eastwood, he wants you to show up, say the lines, nail it in one take, move on. It was like watching two people speaking completely different languages, says someone who watched this disaster unfold. Leo would show up with books of research, wanting to discuss psychology and motivation. Clint just wanted him to say the words and trust that it would work. But here's where it got really uncomfortable. There's this emotional breakdown scene that Leo had to do. He nails it perfectly on the first take, absolutely perfect. Then he asks to do it again, and again, and again. By take 6, Eastwood had walked away from the monitors. He's standing at the craft service table, drinking coffee, just waiting for Leo to stop. You could feel Clint's irritation growing with every "can we do one more?" remembers a camera operator. It was painful to watch, but what really put Leo on the blacklist wasn't just the endless takes. It was what Eastwood saw as a lack of trust. When someone keeps asking for more takes, Clint thinks you're basically saying, "I don't believe you're good enough to capture what we need," explains someone who worked with Eastwood for years. For a guy who's been directing masterpieces since before Leo was born, that's insulting as hell. When filming Wrapped, people said Eastwood looked more exhausted than they'd ever seen him. Someone asked him about it, and his response was perfect. Some people want to climb the mountain. Others want to analyze the mountain, measure the mountain, and write poems about the mountain. I just want to get to the top and enjoy the view. He was obviously talking about Leo's approach versus his own, and that was it. When Eastwood started casting his next movies, DiCaprio's name never came up, even for roles that would have been perfect for him. Great actor, he'd tell casting directors, "Not for me." 2 words that ended any chance of them working together again. Number 1, the woman he's never even worked with. This is the craziest part of the whole story. The number 1 person on Clint Eastwood's hate list is someone he's never even made a movie with. Barbra Streisand. I know. How can you hate someone you've never worked with? But apparently, just knowing about her working methods was enough to make Eastwood's blood boil. Here's the thing. While Eastwood can shoot an entire movie in a few weeks, Streisand is famous for taking forever. We're talking 50 takes for a simple walking scene. Days spent obsessing over camera angles. Clint could finish 3 movies in the time it took Barbara to shoot one scene, says a producer who somehow knew both of them. He'd hear these horror stories about her process and just shake his head in disgust. But it gets way more personal than that. Back in 1992, Both their movies were up for Oscars: Eastwood's Unforgiven and Streisand's The Prince of Tides. Streisand got snubbed for Best Director, and people started talking about sexism in Hollywood. Most people supported her, not Eastwood. He allegedly said something like, maybe if she spent more time making decisions and less time obsessing over details, she'd have finished more than 3 films in 15 years. Ouch. That's ice cold, even for Clint. But Barbara fired back. She basically said Eastwood's movies were shallow, that his efficiency came at the expense of real emotion and depth. For a guy who believes overthinking kills authenticity, this was like getting punched in the gut. Then came the ultimate revenge. Barbra Streisand was originally supposed to direct and star in The Bridges of Madison County. She spent months developing it, planning every detail. Then Eastwood swooped in, took over the project, and completely changed everything. Where Barbara's version was going to be this big, elaborate love story with tons of backstory, Clint stripped it down to the basics. It was like he was deliberately proving his approach could be more emotional with way less fuss, says someone who worked on the film. The movie was a huge success. Critics loved it. Meryl Streep got an Oscar nomination. And Eastwood, he took this as proof that his way was better than Barbara's. They've been throwing shade at each other ever since. When someone asks Eastwood about directors who need dozens of takes, he says things like, at some point, you're not finding truth anymore. You're just manufacturing it. Everyone knows he's talking about Streisand. What makes this the ultimate rivalry is that Barbara represents everything Eastwood hates about modern filmmaking: overthinking, endless preparation, perfectionism, paralysis. To him, she's not just a different kind of director. She's the enemy of everything he believes in. Why this list matters. Here's what's really crazy about Eastwood's blacklist. It's not about talent. Every single person on this list is incredibly gifted. Burton was a Shakespearean legend. Seberg was an icon of French cinema. Tommy Lee Jones is one of the best actors of his generation. DiCaprio is, well, he's DiCaprio. And Streisand has won everything there is to win. But none of that mattered to Eastwood. What mattered was respect for his process. Clint sees excessive preparation and multiple takes as fear pretending to be perfectionism, explains Morgan Freeman, who's worked with Eastwood multiple times. When someone approaches filmmaking from the opposite direction, he doesn't just disagree. He sees it as harmful to art itself. That's why this list exists. It's not personal, it's philosophical. And here's the really wild part. Word has gotten around Hollywood. Actors who know they work a certain way don't even try to get cast in Eastwood movies anymore. They know it would be a disaster for everyone involved. There was this unwritten rule, says a casting director who worked on Eastwood films. If someone was known for needing lots of takes or being process-heavy, they weren't even considered. Clint would rather cast an unknown who could deliver naturally than a superstar who needed 10 takes. The bottom line. So there you have it. Clint Eastwood's secret list of 5 actors he couldn't stand working with. From Leo's endless questions to Burton's drunken disasters. From Tommy Lee's method madness to Gene's emotional chaos. And Barbara's perfectionist paralysis. But here's what makes this story really fascinating. It's not just Hollywood gossip. It's about artistic integrity, about having the guts to work according to your own principles, even when it means saying no to some of the biggest names in the business. Eastwood's list reminds us that even in Hollywood, where everything is about compromise and playing politics, some people still draw hard lines around their creative process. And honestly, there's something kind of badass about that. What do you think? Were you shocked by any of these names? Do you think Eastwood's one-take approach makes better movies? Or do you prefer directors who let actors experiment with multiple takes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I actually read every single one, and some of you guys have the craziest behind-the-scenes stories. And if this peek behind the curtain blew your mind, smash that like button and subscribe for more Hollywood secrets. We dig up the stories that the studios don't want you to know about the movies you love. Because remember, in Clint Eastwood's world, you get one shot to make a good impression. Blow it, and you're done forever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we're exposing even more shocking secrets from Hollywood's biggest legends.